Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reviewing The Endless Steps of a Stolen Soul, which is part 1 in a duology by an author called Martin S. Wathen. Apologies if I've pronounced your surname wrong, but I've done my best. Martin contacted me a while ago. I can't remember whether it was through my email or through my Goodreads account. But he contacted me asking me if I would like to read his novel. And I said, yeah, sure, I wouldn't mind reading it, but I'm going to give it my honest thoughts and opinions and give it an honest review, because I said to him that I respect him as an author to give him my honest feedback, and I also respect to give you guys my honest feedback as well. Before I go any further, I just want to address Martin right now. Even though I liked this book, it wasn't 100% perfect. It was kind of the middle of the road, but everything that I say throughout this video, just take with a grain of salt. You should be extremely pleased with yourself that you have written a novel. Something that I think that every human being on the face of the planet wants to actually do. But you have done it, and that is something that should never be taken away from you. So just think about this video as me giving you my opinions and my feedback and what I liked and disliked about your novel. So Martin has sent me a clip to put in this video, so let's just go straight over to him now, where he will be discussing his novel and himself as an author.
Hello, my name's Martin S. Wathen and I'm a writer from Birmingham, England, and I'm a writer of mainly horror, but I do other genres, I suppose, like I'm doing at the moment a book which is more of a drama / tragedy, I suppose. And I also have a vocal account where I ramble about American football and films and things like that. And what else? I've wrote a few comedy scripts, which debatable success. And but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to thank David for taking the time to give me this opportunity to talk about the book with the longest title on earth, a title so long that I sometimes stumble on my words and make it seem like I don't know the title of my own book. And that's The Endless Steps of a Stolen Soul, which is part 1 of a duology, horror duology by me. And I just want to thank him for taking the time to offer his feedback and kind of give me this opportunity to do this disaster of a segment, which I'm sure when I watch the video I'm going to cringe and zoom past, and I'm never going to see this after I send it him. But thank you so much for taking the time to read this book, really. And about this book, it's a horror, the first half of a horror series, which is where we follow this town called this small kind of English town which prides themselves on their morals and their kind of too good to be true reputation, I suppose. And we follow them as they're encountered by the crisis of a body rolling up to their lake, and what seems like initially a mannequin is actually a body which has been stripped of its eyes, its mouth, its nose. There's not even a hair on it, there's no bones inside of it, there's absolutely nothing. And they kind of realise that this is far from an isolated incident, and there's a very high likelihood that they're going to be amongst that body. They're going to be a lot like that body. And I kind of took the opportunity to contribute towards this weird like subgenre of mass hysteria kind of stories. And I took this opportunity to kind of talk about mass hysteria from various different angles throughout the town. And kind of we see kind of the hysteria in a character, and we see the opinions of a character on another character and things like that, and we kind of go in depth on the quite rightly mass hysteria of this horrific situation. And yeah, the book and the series in total is inspired by a lot of horror media, I suppose, which I'm massively inspired by. So towards the back, if you reach the back of the book, you'll find a about the author section for each book, and both sides kind of discuss my inspiration in writing, I suppose. And a lot of that inspiration is horror cinema, horror media, not just horror books, horror books as well. And yeah, this first kind of half of the series is a lot more mystery based, and I'm very excited to see not only what David thinks, but what everybody else thinks, if anybody else reaches out to me on my socials, which is in the back of the book, to kind of what people think as the book goes on, and they kind of draw their own conclusions of what they think might be happening as they kind of start to realise Camomile's dark history as it starts to unveil itself kind of around them. And I also am excited to see, particularly in this review, what David's kind of opinion on certain characters are if he goes into the second book, and see kind of what he thinks of each character. And I also just again want to thank him very much for taking the opportunity to talk about my book, which I had so much fun writing, and I really am so very excited to see his review. But again, on this 200th take, which I think actually might be the one, just when I see his review, I'm going to skip straight past this disaster of a segment. But thank you again, and I hope not only in the review, but anybody watching this that has either read the book or plans to read the book enjoys it. And I hope very much that they reach out to me and let me know if they enjoy it, or if they don't enjoy it, reach out to me and tell me it's crap. Feedback's exciting, I'll get excited at anything. But thank you, and thank you for this, and I'll do a nice little transition for you to help you.
Thanks for that, Martin, and I will try my best to get some contact information from Martin, and I will have it somewhere in the description. Not sure if it will be on the day that this video is uploaded, but I will try to put the contact information down there as soon as I can. So this is just going to be a spoiler-free video, and this is just going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding this novel. So this story is set in the quiet and quaint little town of Chamomile, but everyone in this town prides themselves in being the best of the best, the most heartwarming, the most welcoming, the most quaint little town that you can ever come across. But is it as perfect as they think it is, or are they just pretending to be? The book opens up by introducing us to an individual called Oliver, who has just literally killed his father. This isn't a spoiler, this is the first sentence of the book. And after killing his father, he flees and he goes into a wooded area near his house. And Oliver, I don't think that he's a bad individual. He's just been pressurized by his father. But it's not as black and white as what it first appears to be. The next time we see Oliver, he has suffered a worse fate than his father did, as the members of this town one at a time and in small groups, slowly but surely, see this mannequin floating face down in their river, slowly going towards the centre of their friendly town. At first, everyone thinks that this is just a mannequin that has been left in the river like a shop window dummy that has been discarded and thrown into a river, and it's just been floating down the river and into their town. But they soon discover that this is not one mere shop window dummy or mannequin. This is what's happened to Oliver. His facial features have gone. His nose is gone, his mouth is gone, his eyes have gone, his ears, his hair, any birthmarks, tattoos, any distinguishing features of his body have been erased. His fingernails, his toenails, his body hair has all been removed. Even his bones and internal organs have been taken away. And what is left is a clean slate, a fresh start of this body, and it's basically like a skin bag, a basic construction of a human being, but without the features that make us who we are. Not entirely sure how the members of this town come to know that this is Oliver, but that's what they discover. But they soon find out that this is just a tip of the iceberg, that there's something lurking in their neighbouring forest. A creature, maybe of this world, maybe of another, who knows? Or creatures. It's reported in this book that there's more than one of them that is lurking in this wooded area that is not a mindless killing machine. It has an intelligence, it has a conscience, it finds joy in hunting, it finds joy in tormenting, and it finds pleasure in being dominant over the human race. So as the book goes on, other bodies start turning up. Other members of this town that have been wiped clean, that have been left in a mannequin state. So at this point, we are introduced to the two main roles or leading characters in this novel. And that is Gavin, who is a journalist and a close childhood friend of Oliver's. It's described that throughout time they drifted apart, but that friendship between them never really went away. There is a queer representation in this book. I won't say where it is or who it's within this book, but it is there. And there is a concept of a father not being at all supportive of his son being gay. So be warned if that may trigger you. It's not to an extreme level, but it is a big part of the book or of that character. And the second important character is a sheriff called Stockwell, who does his best to investigate and find out what's happening. And at times, Gavin and Stockwell team up to work with each other and try to solve this, and other times they are doing their own things and trying to solve the mystery and what's going on. This book reminded me a lot about Stephen King, how this book is extremely detailed in its description of the town itself, which is a character, and of the residents and of our main characters. It describes heavily about what they're doing, how they're feeling, and their environment as well. And in that sense, it reminds me a lot about Stephen King. And if I had to describe this book, I would say it's Stephen King crossed with a episode, or what seems to be an episode, of Stranger Things. If you like books that are heavily descriptive, both in the environment and what the characters are feeling and going through, then you will enjoy this book more. But for me, that is one of its downsides. It's one of its flaws. It focuses too much, in my opinion, on description. And it doesn't have very much dialogue between characters. So there isn't that relationship that the reader forms with the characters. Yes, it's important to describe about how the character's feeling and what they're going through so we can form some sort of emotional bond with them. But if there's no dialogue, or if there isn't much of it, for me, I found myself struggling to care about these characters. Despite the fact that I like them, I found it hard to form that connection. And when there is dialogue between characters, in between what they're saying is like massive paragraphs of description. And when you get to another character's response, you kind of lose track about what the other person said and what they were talking about and essentially what the point was. So I think that this book would have benefited if it found a balance between description and dialogue between characters. There's that delicate balance between the two. You cannot have one more than the other. And this book is about 300 pages long. But it took me a while to get through this book. I'm not entirely sure why. It took me about a month to get through this book. Yes, I wasn't reading it every single day, but that's how long it took me. So at times it was a struggle for me to read it. Probably because of the reasons I've just said. Not saying that it's a bad book or a terrible book. This isn't the most horrible thing I've ever read. And I know I've just realised that I haven't said what type of book this is. This is a horror book. So this isn't the most terrible horror book that I've ever read. That award would probably go to Nothing But Black and Teeth or Hex. And even then I wouldn't mind giving them a reread. But this book showed promise. It really did. I would have just liked it to have a bit more dialogue between characters so I could form a emotional connection between them. I personally think that you can have dialogue and also describe about how a character is feeling and what they're doing after they've said something. But this is Martin's first ever book, so I wanted to give him a break for that. Also, the terms that he uses is because he is from merry old England. Some of the terms in this are very, very British. If you aren't from England, then some of these terms may go over your head. And a lot of the times there are all these complex words and terms that were used that I personally felt that was unnecessary. So I think that that's something that Martin should address in his future books, is that he should look at more books like Stephen King, which I feel that that's where he is aiming towards, of what he reminded me of when I was reading this book, which is a massive compliment, and I do mean it. So I think that it would benefit him to actually read something like Salem's Lot and It, more or less for the whole culture of the town and the town as a character, because I think that if he hones that craft and hones that sweet balance between description and dialogue, then he would really excel in this. With that said, is this book a complete waste of your time? No, it isn't. No book is a complete waste of your time. I would at least recommend that you give this a try. This book is available in Kindle, obviously, and is in paperback, and I'm pretty sure it's in hardback. And you can get it through Amazon, and it is on Goodreads. So I would at least recommend that you give it a try. And I do mean what I said at the start. This book is a cross between Stephen King and an episode of Stranger Things. Because this is part 1 of a duology, it does leave on a cliffhanger. I am probably going to read part 2 at some point. But when I do, or before I do rather, I'm going to reread part 1 again and then go into part 2. But let me know if you are intrigued to pick up this book. Let me know if I've maybe encouraged you or piqued your interest. So I'm going to rate this book a 3 stars out of 5. I just want to say here, thank you, Martin, for reaching out to me. Despite the fact that this wasn't the best thing I've ever read, please do not let that discourage you. Think about this video as a kind of feedback, a way of you to harness your writing abilities. As when I was going through this book, I saw glimpses of genius. So guys, with all that out of the way, all said and done, I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye.